The president and his administration don't want an educated populace. Why don't we just go back to the book 1984 if it hasn't been banned? It's clear to me, this administration wants an uneducated electorate so that Mr. Trump and his courtiers can control thought, therefore control votes, and control the population. And yet, privatizing is really the other ambition, an uneducated electorate and profit and privatization of our education system. Do you promise us that that isn't your ambition?
That clearly is not my ambition. I think I've stated that very well today.
Then why in God's name do you want to shutter it? Why don't you want to protect kids with disabilities? Why don't you want to protect kids who have been every decade denied equal access simply because of how much their parents make, the zip code they live in, the color of their skin? Why are you shuttering a department that's supposed to lift up those children? Thank you, Chairman Adderholt, Ranking Member DeLauro, for holding this hearing, and I thank you, Secretary McMahon, for being here today. I want to start with the role of the Department of Education. I come at this as a mother, as a grandmother, a former teacher myself, a former state legislator with two grandmothers who were public school teachers. I have a lot of experience with the education system in Pennsylvania as well as the country. First, the history of the federal education involvement, and Ms. Watson-Coleman was getting at some of this that I'd like to build upon. Federal investments in education began to increase dramatically in the 50s and 60s and 70s, in tandem with the rise of the success of the civil rights movement. Americans finally began to recognize the vast inequalities in our education system. Thus, federal funding was used to improve education access for students from poor backgrounds or minority students, for women, for people with disabilities, and other marginalized groups. Finally, Congress established the Department of Education in 1979, replacing the Office of Education. Secretary McMahon, it's alarming that you and the president want to turn that clock back. You take us back to a time before any federal oversight of education, before many of the programs that guarantee free and equal access to education for all Americans. You said as much in your testimony. After all the Department of Education's work to ensure equal access to education, you're embarking on the department's final mission? You intend to put yourself out of a job? That's a little jarring to me. If you were a pediatric oncologist, I'd welcome that. Let's get you out of a job through cures, through healing, through ending of pediatric cancer. But ending a department that is supposed to oversee the education of our very youngest, to guide their future? Have you taken the time to educate yourself about this history? I'd encourage you to go ask students who attended school back then. Black students, brown students, students with disabilities, students from poor families. What was access like for them before the Department of Education? Frankly, eliminating the Department of Education, to me, is rather Orwellian. The president and his administration don't want an educated populace. Why don't we just go back to the book 1984 if it hasn't been banned? It's clear to me, this administration wants an uneducated electorate so that Mr. Trump and his courtiers can control thought, therefore control votes, and control the population. I'll note a secondary measure here that is going on. The increase in funding for charter schools. We know that charter schools originally were supposed to be incubators of the best ideas, great practices to be brought back into the public school education system so that every kid had an access to such things. But this administration and you, who want to put yourself out of a job, following the playbook, page 319 of Project 2025, first sentence, shutter the Department of Education. You're all following the book, that book. Too bad that one wasn't banned. And yet, privatizing is really the other ambition, an uneducated electorate and profit and privatization of our education system. Do you promise us that that isn't your ambition?
That clearly is not my ambition. I think I've stated that very well today.
Then why in God's name do you want to shutter it? Why don't you want to protect kids with disabilities? Why don't you want to protect kids who have been every decade denied equal access simply because of how much their parents make, the zip code they live in, the color of their skin? Why are you shuttering a department that's supposed to lift up those children?
Because those programs don't have to flow through the Department of Education, and
They can flow through the state. I was a state legislator. That's called shift and shaft. I've spoken with the governor of Pennsylvania. They can't pick up the tab anymore for education of our students. Not to mention, it would be inequitable by state, by state, by state. Why are you in this job at all? If you don't have a dedication to the future of our children, why are you in this job?
I, too, am a mother and a grandmother, and I want the best for my family going forward.
Vouchers.
For my grandchildren, for my great-grandchildren, and I hope to leave a legacy that we have established best practices for education that all the states can use. That would be a great legacy to be able to leave, to be able to show states these are some of the things that they can do. I think states have to look at their budgets.
Madam Secretary, the legacy you will be leaving is that I shut down the Department of Education. How we educate our children determines not just their future, but our own. But I think it's a sad legacy you will leave. I yield back.
The Department of Education is not educating anyone. Well, I can say this, and I will.
Representative Madeleine Dean has spoken out about what millions of parents, teachers, and students are thinking as Trump's chosen education secretary testifies about plans to dismantle the Department of Education. This wasn't a hearing, it was an intervention. Secretary McMahon openly admitted her job isn't to improve education, protect students, or expand opportunities. It's to shut it down. She's following Trump's Project 2025, which explicitly calls for eliminating the Department of Education on page 319. Dean called it for what it is, an attack on public education, equity, and critical thinking. Why? Because Trump and his allies want to control the electorate, not educate it. They want students who never question authority, and McMahon is helping them do it. This isn't just bad policy, it's dangerous. McMahon couldn't defend essential programs like Title I for low-income schools or the IDA protections for students with disabilities. She couldn't explain how states, already stretched thin, could manage billions in new federal responsibilities. Instead, she relied on the states' rights argument used in the past to block desegregation and defund schools in underserved areas. Let's not ignore the money behind it all. While McMahon pushes to shut down oversight, she's expanding federal funding for charter schools, paving the way for privatization and profit. Dean's takedown was powerful and necessary. If you're shaping the future of America's children, you shouldn't be trying to destroy that future. This isn't just about one secretary. It's part of a broader assault on public education and democracy. If you believe schools should uplift every child, it's time to speak up. Share this video and vote like public education depends on it, because it does. Join us at The Liberal Lens and support us on Patreon to fight back harder.